RWBY has a villain problem. Actually, that's not fair. Anime has a villain problem. Eastern storytelling has a villain problem. Contemporary storytelling has a villain problem. I really shouldn't have to tell you all this, but if 80% of TV from the last 10 years is any indication, I have to. A villain should oppose a hero. He should have a reason to oppose the hero. A good villain will have a goal and motivation just like a good hero. So, considering that last year I came out with honest looks detailing the struggles the main characters have had, imagine the issues with the villains. For this video, I'm separating the characters associated with the Chaos Syndicate from the characters associated with the White Fang. That's right, this is going to be a two-parter, and I'm going to start at the top. Salem was introduced at the end of Volume 3 and has since sat in her castle delegating authority to her subordinates. Now, I don't have any problem with this on principle. There's still a lot of questions surrounding Salem. I mean, we can't even be sure she's not human. For all we know, she can't physically leave her castle, and that's why she needs followers. But there are two issues. The first is something I complained about throughout Volume 5. She hasn't earned the level of fear all the older cast has for her. There's no reason why Raven, Oscar, and Crow are so filled with dread for her. She's got the Grimm, but the Grimm routinely get slaughtered by a bunch of kids. She has her subordinates, and look how that turned out. She has her own powers, but then why hasn't she actually succeeded? The only reason she's gotten as far as she has is because Ozpin is somehow even more incompetent. The second issue is something not at all unique to RWBY. Salem's appearance and role in the story cheapens the other villains. Think of a show with a good villain cast. What do those shows have in common? All the villains have their own separate goals. Batman, Spider-Man, Captain America, Superman, they all have armies of villains lining up to take them down, but each one maintains their own autonomy. They all have their own reasons for fighting the hero. They all have their own worldviews. For a decent anime example, I turn your attention to Naruto, where Pain's end goal with the Akatsuki was very different from Obito's and Madara's. And even when those goals were similar, they were selfish enough to where they all wanted to be at the top, but only one person could be top dog, and so Naruto's power of friendship triumphs over tyranny. In short, all these other villains don't matter because they're just following Salem, which brings us to Team Witch. Watts is the MVP so far in my book. Leave it to Chris Abbott to add some much needed dignity to the villain. I love how he's the only one who seems to realize how retarded Raven and Cinder were in the latter parts of Volume 5. I'm just dreading Volume 6 inevitably doing something to make me not like him anymore. Tyrion is a lot of fun, but he's never going to rise above henchman status. Though his zealousness is a better reason to serve Salem than anyone else in the gang. He's just a lot of fun. The only real problem I have with him is that he tends to delve into Jared Leto Joker territory of cringiness, but that's chalked up to the direction, not the writers, and certainly not the actor. Hazel is kind of the opposite. The direction on him is fine. Yeah, his screams sound a little generic. But that's a nitpick. He's got a cool design and a warm demeanor. His power set is really cool even if it does just rip off Bane. Hey, if you're going to rip off a villain, might as well rip off a well-liked villain from the greatest rogues gallery in popular fiction. And I'm just glad that they finally did something with the whole dust-infused and skin thing they mentioned back in Volume 2. What sucks is his motivation. I get what they're going for, but it's just really thin. Ozpin, you got my sister killed by having her fight Grimm, so I'm going to work with the person that controls the Grimm and kill other huntsmen and children. I saved Cinder for last because she's a mainstay. She's the Darth Vader to Salem's Palpatine. One of the first moments in the entire series was the writers using her as a meter stick for what RWBY will one day be capable of and setting up a logical through line where Cinder and RWBY are rivals. And that just got put on ice. Cinder is an idiot. Her plan was convoluted and it only half worked. She was making it up on the fly, and before you try to counter-argument, Volume 3, Episode 5, Cinder discovers Spinny is a robot. Volume 3, Episode 9, just a day later, she uses that fact as a major linchpin in her plan. There are hundreds of ways her plan could have flopped if Ozpin wasn't stupid. Lucky for her, he is. So like I said, the only virtue of the villains is that they don't suck as much as Ozpin. Then after Volume 3, every minute she's on screen is building up her rematch against RWBY. They make this the entire reason Cinder agreed to Raven's demand, but then they don't even do anything with it. Cinder and RWBY don't fight. They don't even talk to each other, and Cinder completely ignores her existence half the time. And Cinder's got a posse because it's not bad enough that her autonomy is taken away by Salem. She has to go and do the same to 2 other people. Mercury was a lot of fun when he was voiced by JJ Castillo. I like Yuri Lowenthal just fine, but every time he talks or grunts, I will never not hear Sasuke, and it's distracting. There's not a lot to Mercury. We don't know what is in it for him. I will say it's really hypocritical that people have been saying that Emerald deserves redemption in full ignorance that Mercury was the one who lamented the White Fang's fate at the end of Volume 2. Gee, it's almost as if the writers are awful and don't know what they're doing half the time and have a hard time remembering what they wrote. Speaking of Emerald, other than the lost puppy dog angle, she doesn't have any skin in this game. I like that she is more of a thief archetype as opposed to the murderer, psychopath, idealistic, criminal archetype these things tend to overly rely on. Emerald has always just been the least interesting villain up until they basically confirmed just how thirsty she is for Cinder. So, I sound mixed to positive, right? Well, that's how I feel about the villains in general. Mixed to positive. So what's the problem? Too many heroes, not enough villains. We've seen Cinder, Hazel, and Tyrion at their limits and beaten. We've seen now that they've been beaten by a bunch of freaking kids. These villains are supposed to be the thing of nightmares, the thing Salem has used to eliminate legendary huntsmen. Yet a couple kids who only attended Beacon for a year are enough to take on so many of them. That's with the added support of Lionheart, Raven, and Vernal. Villains are only threatening when they're, well, a threat. Going back to Bane, I personally think Bane is a terrible character. He's boring, his motivation is thin, he's got the personality of a rock, yet seeing Batman punch his way through armies of thugs only to come across this luchador-looking mug and get his shit wrecked makes Bane seem 1,000 times cooler than he actually is. So scenes like this, and this turn a fun villain into a boring waste of time, and without the motivation to compensate for their lack of power, none of these villains leave any real impact. All these villains probably have tragic backstories or something, but that's all just conjecture. Thinking about it, RWBY has awfully written and conceived villains, but what doesn't these days? For what it's worth, I've been more interested in Salem than I ever was for Zhu Habak or even All for One. Hey, don't misconstrue me because Shigaraki is everything I ever wanted Cinder to be, and more, and the last couple arcs of the manga have forced him out of his master's shadow. Maybe Cinder will go through a similar situation. Maybe they're doing that with Emerald and forcing her to find some autonomy. As I write this, I'm more interested in the villains as characters than I am in the villains as, well, villains. Volume 5 just soured the whole ordeal. They're not threatening or menacing, and all this pomp and circumstance and contrived dread just wears on me and pisses me off. And nowhere is that more clear than the other half of the villain lineup. I'm Mediocrity4. Join me next time when I rant about the White Fang.